Okay.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to call the January 25th Board of Commissioners meeting to order. We're going to start out with a prayer from Commissioner Sarkella and the pledge by myself.
Let us bow our heads, dear Lord. We ask that you be with us at our meeting today. We're thankful for the days that you do give us and the sunshine. Give us strength to make sound decisions on behalf of our friends and neighbors, and allow us to continue to serve those who live in this county. We're grateful for everything that you give us. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. District 1 Chairman John Block.
here.
District 2 Commissioner Gary Gerling.
Here.
District 3 Commissioner Bill Sarkella.
Present.
District 4 Commissioner Roger Ballard.
Present.
District 5 Commissioner Joel White.
Here.
Thank you, Evelyn. Moving on to additions, corrections, deletions of the agenda. The only deletion that I have is Christy Sutherland from Senior Services will not be here, so we'll remove that from the agenda. If there are no further adjustments to the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting.
I'll approve the amended agenda for today.
We have a motion from Commissioner Heberlein and support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to our meeting minutes from our January 4th meeting. If there are no corrections, I'll entertain a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Ballard. There's support from Commissioner Sarkella. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Correspondence, petitions, and introductions. We have some communications here on the green sheet if you'd like to review those. At this time, we'll move on to commissioner reports, and we'll start with Commissioner Sarkella.
Attended a couple of municipal meetings in Sand Lake Township. They're discussing becoming a charter because of their population, also working on their fire authority agreement and equipment and so forth, and some millage discussion. And they had an emergency with their water system, so they're working on some agreements with that as well. Apparently a fire hydrant got taken out a while back and created quite the mess for everybody. So they're going to come up with an agreement with the other municipalities around them so they have a plan in place if that should ever happen again. And the Village of Port Sanilac, they're moving forward with their harbor master plan. They also had the harbor master and the chair have both moved on to greener pastures, so they're looking for positions there. And they've had a couple apps for their parks and rec positions, so that's good for them moving forward. And they updated their trash rate. And last night, Lexington Village, they entered a memorandum of understanding with the DNR in regards to the harbor, because phase 2 of their harbor project is moving forward. And so hopefully that'll be done in the next couple of years for them. And also they have some issues with the mobile home park and erosion. And they also discussed their COVID policy there as well. And they're exploring the possibility of potentially sharing a manager with Sandusky moving forward. That's all I have.
Excellent report. Thank you, Bill. Commissioner Heberlein.
Last week, I attended our County Planning Commission meeting, and somehow, I don't know, dates got mixed up, and we had 2 show up, so we didn't have a quorum. And there were 3 townships that had documents that need to be approved, but I talked to the townships. They could work around that, and the next one we'll address in our next meeting. This morning was our Arpa meeting at 10 o'clock. And there was a conflict of meetings. I had a 9/11 meeting and an ARPA meeting. And so I let Dawn know I couldn't attend the 9/11 meeting. But in that meeting, one thing that there was several things discussed, but April, what was the date for question and answer for anyone?
February 8th.
February 8th. Yeah, February. Yes. Okay. So for you that are attending, if there's question and answers for that, that's the date. Parks and Recreation, I attended that 2 weeks ago, I guess already. And Roger probably talked more about that, but it was discussed about hiring and I don't know if it's the right terminology, Roger, manager over all the parks.
It's actually a Parks Recreation and Parks and Recreation Director
Okay, and
title.
obviously, that was my first meeting I've been in. That was the first meeting I've been since I put in that committee. But based off the increase of people using our parks and the complications and the extra work it causes, Roger, I think it's a plus for park restoration to move in that direction. End of my report.
Thank you, Gary. I myself attended a Minden City Village meeting a couple weeks ago, and same thing as always, just outreaching, trying to provide information related to ARPA, which is the final rule has came out with ARPA, which has actually been advantageous to basically every municipality in St. Louis County. So anybody that received less than $10 million can take that funding and use it in the lost revenue category, which allows them to essentially use it on any normal governmental services rather than the highly restrictive rules that they had. So that's a big plus, and just getting that information out to the community. That's all I have.
Let's see, tomorrow night I'll be attending Elk Township. Last week on the 20th, I attended Elmer Township. They, as pretty much all the other townships, are dealing with blight issues and some zoning issues, not so much in the smaller ones or less populated ones, but Marlette in particular, they have quite a few zoning issues. Flynn Township, I attended on the 11th. They're working on updating their solar ordinance. City of Marlette, I attended on the 17th. They got a grant for a new pool house, be a matching funds grant, and they're looking to get that constructed this summer. That's the original pool house, I believe, was built in 1953, so it's older than I am. Village of Peck, I was there the 19th. The Village of Peck, when people are busy down there, they are always thinking of ways to improve services and whatnot for their residents, and they're doing a real good job. They are actually in the process of hiring a manager. Parks, we met, like Gary said, on the 4th. We've been interviewing. I can't say a name yet, but we believe we've got a manager hired for Evergreen Park that's going to do a really good job. We also have interviewed a couple of office managers and have a couple of real good ones that have experience in parks. So that's things are looking up there. And let's see. I had a community mental health orientation meeting on the 13th. That was about a 4-hour long meeting. Got lunch, but got to see the operation. Some of it over there is very interesting. And I have a meeting tonight that starts at 5, and I'm looking forward to serving on that board. That's it.
Good report. Thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Wyatt.
Sound Like Transportation Corporation had a meeting last week, attended that. We discussed upcoming, we didn't really discuss upcoming negotiations, but that was coming up, and it was discussed by some members of the employees in public comment. It was interesting. Of course, they're looking for ways to increase ridership. One of the problems is we've lost a major contract with SIDC, the sound like what's it called, the Career Center, And what happened was through COVID, they had to find work for their own employees. So naturally they had their bus drivers pick up those routes, and it left us hanging. And the employees are taking an interest in reaching out and increasing ridership. So that's good to know. We expect to have a department meeting, or a couple of board members are going to be at this department meeting to help facilitate between management and employees some successful options moving forward, and some brainstorming sessions. I'm looking forward to that later on in February. And then I sent out an email when you guys told us about the change when the administrator with the ARPA funding, that was good news for sure, because people were starting to say, hey, when are we going to be able to come to these meetings and whatnot? Say, well, you're able to come to them all along, as we notified you, but it sounds like it's pretty easy peasy now in terms of to facilitate how you're going to figure out how to spend this money. And you're going to continue on having meetings, I take it. So I can tell them about it, but it sounds like, the answer to the questions was in that email that you sent us. So that was helpful. And so they're excited about that. And Bill, you mentioned that, was it Sanilac Township was looking at doing a charter township? Not sure. I know Lexington was in the paper for doing that, as was Worth.
Yeah, they received notification from the state that they qualify to do that if they choose.
Yeah, so they put a notice, Lexington did, they put a notice in the paper. If you saw it was in the Jeffersonian and the Herald. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, Lexington Township did and Worth did as well. And I contacted the supervisor about that because to me, that in the paper sounded like they were actually undertaking efforts to do so. And it's quite a big deal to change from a general township to a charter township. It's a huge deal, particularly for the taxpayers and the funding that they are required to give to that municipality. Did you say that they actually had a meeting where they want to do that, or they just?
I don't think they're going to move forward with it.
Yeah, that's
It's part of the discussion.
That's the impression I got. So something from the state facilitated these townships to put forward that they were eligible because they had over 2,000 residents, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so the notification in the paper might be alarming to residents concerned with their townships electing to do so. It doesn't sound like they are doing that. However, it's another good reason why, folks should show up at their township meetings and be involved at the township level so that they can answer those questions ahead of time before they read about them in the paper. That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Wyatt. Moving on to administrator's report, Tara.
Yep, since we last met at the beginning of the month, I've attended several MREC committee meetings, basically discussing the negotiations that we held with DTE on December 21st. So we are very close to a settlement. It sounds like at this point, it just needs to be reduced to paper. And then, of course, the process, once we do have a settlement, is to go to each of the 17 townships who are involved in the MREC location, which is several counties, and have those township boards agree to the settlement. We still don't have any negotiating or any type of communications we haven't held with Consumers or Exelon. So once we get through DTE, there's still Consumers and Exelon outlined. We actually have some wind parks with Exelon and not Consumers, and then obviously DTE. So it will be quite an orchestrated process. And I think it does have some of our township assessors a little bit worried about what this process is going to look like, because they're heading into their busiest time of the year. And then we potentially have this agreement with DTE. So more to come on that, though. As soon as I can get information out that's not confidential, I'll certainly let you know. And then just a quick note. So it's been almost a month since we transitioned to STT security. It seems to be going very smoothly. We have 2 new guards, so we have 3 total, which is an increase of 1 compared to last year with DK security. We do have some new policies in place. I don't know if you've heard anything. One of the policies with STT security requires individuals to remove bags. I know that's been a little bit of a sticking point at the door, but we're working through it. They're also screening more items than they used to. And I think what we're finding is good news. So we need to make sure that we're staying on top of that process. I will have STT security on site. I think it's next week. They're coming in for another discussion and just to see how things are going. Definitely more involved though than our prior contractor.
Is that based on their interpretation of the job, or have we had requests?
No, that's STT Security's policies.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any questions for Tara?
Thank you.
Hearing none, we'll move on. At this time is public comments. This would be for agenda items only. Is there any public comments pertaining to agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on. We're going to have a presentation from Jim Johnson, the Director of our Drug Task Force. Jim, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I put out a brief presentation packet for the board members and administrator. We're going to keep it simple. I know it's been renewed every 4 years since 1987, when it was first initiated. The last year was the highest margin of passing in the village's history. Was over 4,000 votes to the positive side, which I think shows good support, but not only the commissioners and the administration, but by the public in general. Budget that I have that I submitted a breakdown of this year's approved budget. If you look at that, 71% of that is actually contractual salary and benefits, which I think consume most government agencies' fundings. 18% of that is the operational expenses, which would be rental, car leases, cost allocation, contracted memberships. We pay for several things that are on a yearly renewal. One's Leads Online, which is access for us to get through governmental searches throughout the United States for information on stolen property. We do background checks, which actually could be utilized by the county in hiring. The sheriff's office uses that. We use that for criminal background investigations. Those things add up to around $20,000 a year. By the time we're done, we'll utilize those. They keep raising their rates like everybody else does. Then lastly, we do like 10.5% amounts to the education and counseling, which would include the counseling services provided by the Valley County Health Department. They have a full-time hire that goes to each one, is available for each one of the schools in the county. For counseling, generally more scheduled with the high schools than with the elementary, although they can meet with younger students if required or needed. Those recommendations that come from the schools are out by their choice. We make the offer, they include that. We're back into all the schools, the health department is, with the exception, I believe, of Croslex School. There's probably the personal reasons for that, but there are reasons. We also sponsored the TEAM initiative, which replaced DARE 2 years ago. And both TEAM and DARE, the last 2 years because of Covet, the schools are kind of trying to get back on their own footing. So those have kind of been set aside until the schools can get back in. I just talked with the Sheriff Department team officer. It stands for Teaching, Education, and Mentoring. And the DARE program was good. I liked it. I was a healthy advocate of it. The team allows the programs to be represented from the kindergarten class all the way up to high school, where our DARE program focused on 5th and 6th grade. This way there, if Marlette Schools is having an incident with vaping, that instructor from one of the Marlette officers can go directly over to the school and teach on that subject to whatever grades that are affected on that. I think that's going to be advantageous to us. Too early to tell what it's doing because we're just starting to get back into those schools. CPS has started, Brown City. Croslex started last week, and that is in all 7 of the school districts in the county. And I think that's been extremely helpful. It's also good for the mentoring part for the kids in the school to get to know law enforcement. I think that interaction goes both ways.
In that program, do you feel you have enough officers to cover all the needs there?
We made the offer to every local department that covers a school. Croslex schools, the Croswell Police Department, and Lexington are both interested in the program. They don't have the staffing to provide somebody to do that. So the Sheriff's Office is now covering Brown City, Croswell, Lexington, and Kirksville schools. Deckerville has their own officer assigned. Peck has their own officer. Sandusky has 2. Marlette has 2. Did I forget anybody? But that offers out, and it remains to be out. So if like a year from now, Lexington or Croswell police departments decide they would like to send an officer that, we support the funding to put the officer in a week school. And one of the reasons we switched from DARE to TEAM also was there was no in-state DARE training. The last officer that we had, Deputy Emil, when he worked at the sheriff's office, had to go all the way down to Tennessee for that training. So the training for TEAM is sponsored and created by the Michigan State Police here. The schools here, the updates are here, and we can keep pretty consistent with that.
So DARE was a good program starting out, and it was, I don't want to say wore itself out, but it was time for the next step.
Yeah, and they're learning to adapt to that now. But even if the program came up to the level of TEAM, I think just the fact that we have to search outside of the state to get that training, I think, was causing some difficulties.
Mhm.
It's hard to put somebody away for at least 2 weeks for school and a week retraining.
Sure.
And the team seems to be more adaptive to what our current problems are.
Mhm.
I did give a short statistical thing on the complaints that we handled. COVID affected us also in the drug enforcement. It was harder when there was nobody out in the public to go into a Walmart parking lot to do surveillance, when there was only 5 cars in there. It's picked back up, our complaint load picked back up. Part of that is we sent an officer down to Atlanta last year for a federally funded program that we didn't have to pay for the cell phones. That officer has done multiple phones since he's come back. I did 46 phones. I'm just going to give you the breakdown. You don't have that on your sheet. I just want you to show how diverse and how useful accessing phones and gleaning information off phones that we have to get through search warrants or consent. We just don't take a phone and just do it. But we had a department assist for B&E, we had a department assist, and this is getting the information off the phones to show where they're at, what they were doing, and who they were having discussions with when that information is available. We had Sandusky PD, UDAA. We had the sheriff's office on a CSC where it was juveniles involved. We had a prosecutor's office where there was threats and harassment. Not to the prosecutors, but complaints where the prosecutor would call us up to handle a complaint for a phone access. So that was really good. We actually had the DNR on 2 violations. One turned into a CSC in pornography, and the other was hunting violations. We had, for ourselves, we had several meth complaints when the school threats came out with Oxford schools. We had 3 of the schools in our county had complaints that were sent in by phones. We assisted Sandusky on 2 separate occasions where charges were filed, partly based on the information that we were able to glean from those phones. Home invasion, we had cost of a minor for immoral purposes. So the information and the usefulness of that, if we had sent that out to the state police for their lab to do that, we might not get that back for several months. We were able to get that back same day. So it's just amazing the information and how useful that's been to us. Now, if that officer goes back over into uniform here in the coming months, he'll take that equipment with him. We've got backup systems that we're using because we back up for any agency in the county that we take that information for and hold that for them for the legal durations that are required. Am I making sense on that?
That part you lost me there. So you have an officer that received training and equipment was purchased to go along with that training. They've been very beneficial for the objective of the Drug Task Force and its primary mission, but it's had additional results for various agencies in the prosecution of individuals in a variety of crimes, correct?
That's correct.
And that individual is going back into uniformed services at some point.
There's a limited duration where anyone that goes over the drug unit is assigned there.
Clearly that knowledge base goes with them. You're saying the equipment as well?
The equipment will go with them as well.
Is that?
And it'll still be available to the Drug Task Force.
I guess I'm curious, is it because he alone or they alone possess the knowledge to use that equipment?
He has a specific knowledge for the equipment that was federally funded and given to him. There are schools that are local that do a smaller definitive way to extract that, and they'll probably try to send another person to that school as well.
Will they also have to have equipment purchased?
No, but the equipment will be available.
So that'll be available for that individual. So
it's multitask. I think what I'm trying to say is that it would be very difficult for a county our size and our population to have 2 people sponsored from the same area to go to that school down at Atlanta.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we were very fortunate to have that done. That training will not leave, and that expertise will still be available to both the Drug Task Force
mm-hmm.
and any law enforcement in the county.
Jim, I don't believe the county purchased equipment for that. Did they? The federal
government
provided
that equipment, and then, there was $40,000 in equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And that would include the cost of the training.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually paid for his. I think I gave a slight talk on that some time ago.
That doesn't ring a bell. The cell phone thing doesn't. I don't recall hearing about that.
Yeah, it was out of state training, and it was fully funded. Actually, his housing and his travel and everything was paid for and reimbursed by the federal.
You didn't bring him in here to do phone tricks like you did with the dog.
No, I couldn't make the phone lay down.
So it doesn't make an impression upon me, apparently.
You don't want him to search your phone?
No.
Jim, you had made a comment, and I didn't catch it out. You said in 2020, you didn't go to Walmart because there was only 5 cars. So my question is, when it is up to, we're supposed to be customers coming in. So it is the county, or the drug task force and the county and the Sandusky PD, do they all cover Walmart when there's an issue?
As far as
Complaints,
surveillance,
if they get a complaint from Walmart, who handles that?
we don't handle the complaints. I don't mean to pick on Walmart, please don't take it that way.
No, I'm not picking anybody.
When drug transactions are done,
Mhm.
many times they're done in parking lots.
Oh, okay.
And I
You're
guess,
talking more of a drug.
yeah, more of a, it would be easier to relate to thinking about a parking lot at Walmart or the old Kmart
Mhm.
where drug transactions could take place.
Crowded parking lots
Yeah.
facilitate
there's a lot of
drug activity, yeah.
And I guess my point was that during the periods of COVID,
Mhm.
the traffic wasn't out there and we had to reinvent how we did our job.
Yeah.
Surveillance wasn't quite as easy to do.
Mhm.
And small
Which is
communities are
understandable.
not easy to do anyways. You don't get lost in a big city where there's a traffic jam. If there's 10 cars out there, somebody might know 8 of the cars that are in there.
Mm.
And it made it difficult. Things are starting to get back to normal as far as those type of crimes and the way they're committed.
That's not a good thing.
No, and I don't want anyone to think for a moment that the millage is going to fix our problem. It's a big deterrent and it's a necessary evil. I can put up a stop sign and it's not going to stop people from stopping through an intersection. But without it, it would be much, much worse than it is. We've been very fortunate in our county, and I think there's a letter attached here from the chiefs. They can't really do their job as far as drug related without us. And we certainly can't do our job without their help and without the people in the community. It's just not possible. It's a two-way street where we need everybody to do it.
Well, you mentioned that, it's not going to fix things, but isn't the drug task force, in a sense, what little I know, I've been told about the broken window theory of policing, right? Where you address the little things. This is a little thing, but it is comprised of many little things that people want to see activity taken upon, as proved by the 4,000 votes in the last millage election, correct?
To some degree, I think the people appreciate what we're doing, and I think they realize that without that type of enforcement out there, we would be in much worse shape. I mean, we live in a pretty good county where a large majority of the people are very helpful. They watch out for their neighbors. They make calls to our tip lines that are very helpful to us. I just can't see things being better without us, without that group.
You have more to go?
I'll listen to whatever you have to ask, and maybe.
Well, I guess at first I wanted to say, and for the purpose of those that are listening in, you normally give a report every year and a summaries similar to what we receive, right?
A little more in-depth report that I provide once a year. The stats aren't all here, and I don't ever want to think, even when the stats look good for us, stats don't always tell a story. We could work for several months on one complaint to get a felony arrest. Now, I can tell you that back in last year, working with the other agencies, we're on a list of primary arrests. I don't want anybody to think that the arrests of themselves tell the full story. But out of the 45 primary arrests, that carried 74 felony charges and 42 misdemeanor charges. That's significant. Felony charges are anything that are over a year in jail time. And so most of those felonies, now whether they end up after the courts if the person's never been in trouble before, they could be reduced down to a lower felony where there's less time. A year and 1 day is a felony. The total for secondary and assist arrest, where we're either assisting another agency on that, there was a total of on the secondary 18 felony charges and 32 misdemeanor charges. On the assist other agencies, which were ourselves before we had the dog, and one of the reasons we wanted the dog is we needed to have someone else make the stop on a car for us. If we were looking suspected or had information that there were drugs, we don't need to do that as much anymore because we have a car to make that stop. we can do our areas where we want to patrol and that car's not going to get called out on a broken window or a larceny from a mailbox. There was 53 felony charges and 26 misdemeanor charges. So we're talking charges that we were involved in last year alone were over 145 felony charges and 97 misdemeanor charges.
So under secondary, and the number for last year is 86, of which you just described the variety of charges assigned to those numbers. That would be the example, like you mentioned, about utilizing the phone technology in assisting.
That could be a charge if that went through on the camera. We don't carry all of those ourselves and take credit for those at all. Secondary charge could be is if we stop somebody looking for drugs and found a gun in the car.
Okay.
That would be a secondary charge.
So that would be, you're the primary law enforcement agency initiating that search or that.
Yes,
That-
and the assist ones that I spoke of, that would be where we're helping either city or county agency.
Okay. In a physical sense, you're arriving on scene and assisting them in some way.
Either getting called, and I think I have discussed before about our tactic ID analyzer that we have identified. That could be going out and using that as a method to find out whether they had meth or cocaine
Right,
or
right.
whatever derivative of drugs.
Okay.
Look, Jim, just to carry on some of the questions that Mr. White's asked, I was looking at your chart here. In 2015 and 2021, almost a mirror image of one another, except for secondary arrest. What causes that trend to go up so much?
Without going back and looking at the actual events, like I said, you could have a complaint, you could have less complaints and actually put more time and effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
You could have, we could be doing surveillance or having information on someone selling meth and having to do it over a period of several months, or we could have a buy of a drug bought through an undercover and have an arrest made on that the same day. And there's only one day of an investigation.
I guess the question I should have been more specific is it because we're seeing more drug activity come up from the larger cities into our county? 21.
Yeah, I think you always have to understand, I think the major sales of drugs aren't necessarily in our county. Our folks that are addicted to drugs and need the help generally travel outside of our jurisdictional lines. The information when we get a buy or an arrest on a small quantity can be turned over to those larger agencies, whether it's St. Clair County, Macomb County, Genesee, Flint area, and make an arrest. And we don't get credit for that, but by taking that drug dealer off the road or helping them make an arrest, does their job too.
Well, your last page is a testimony to, the activity that your organization undertakes and how you share that information and resources with those agencies. And I've spoken with several chiefs and individuals who have had interactions with you, and they glowing reports about the interoperability that they experience with the DTF. I do have a question, and I just want to preface this that if you recall, gentlemen, we had a policy last year where we were going to actually require these kind of summaries for renewals of millages. So in a sense, is this our first one?
No, we had to say.
Did have CMH?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right here last, man.
And you were aware of that, right? So the information you gave us is,
I never heard it from anybody directly, but indirectly I got that information. Yeah.
well, it's because, we're the legislative body responsible for authorizing villages to be put back on the actual ballots themselves and renewals and such. So I figured it's a good idea that we understand how successful it's been, and you have addressed the success for the DTF.
Right, and I understand that. And unfortunately, it takes more than the first 30 days of the month to get a full year report. And I think I've always presented, and I think the administrator before me always presented a pretty in-depth report and answered questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that would answer a lot of things during the course of the year.
I do have some questions regarding the budget that you got on the first page. I see that, and in the millage language itself, it talks about generating roughly $850,000 in that first year. And of that $850,000 for the budget of 2022, you're spending, I already lost my number here, but considerably more than that, 956,000.
Right, 115 of that thousand is carryover, and that was to add the fifth officer on there. That's the K9 unit. that we have had approval on.
Uh-huh.
So there's basically for one officer for full benefits is around $115,000.
So you're clearly working off some fund equity.
Yes,
And-
it was established over a period of years. And I think I want you to know up front that I think the K-9 unit is so important that one of my suggestions to continue that program when that contingency fund isn't there is to consider elimination of my position. Consideration, and my position in and of itself would make up 115 because I don't have any benefits associated with mine. So it might require either some smaller contingencies if that is left, or one of the other programs.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was another of my points was that, just the costs of items 1 and 2, which are almost, non-negotiable in terms of, like education and counseling, you could choose to continue with that or not. But the costs of 1 and 2 are more than your income from the millage itself. So
It
once
is with the additional officer and his benefits on it.
well, yeah, with the 4 deputies, 1 sergeant, and the K-9, yeah, with the addition of
Yeah,
that.
if if we reduce the deputies, the amount of deputies that we have in staff has been the same since
So
1987.
$115,000, how soon will you be running through your fund equity?
It could go actually up to the next March.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's a considerable amount of time.
Job. Probably hit your philosophy as far as spending money, and the guys are not without things. A couple of the grants that we had funded some things that we didn't have to spend the money for.
Okay.
Do you know what your current fund equity is? Just roughly at this time?
$400,000.
Are you gonna?
I started that 8 years ago with under $40,000.
Does that include any money set aside for business buildings or anything like that?
Are you going to raise our rent?
Oh, no, not at all. But do you have,
No, there's no general application for that fund money. That is there to use exactly what we did. It had always been my intention to try to initiate and get a K-9 officer there. I know that even the sheriff, the previous sheriff, that was one of his desires, and the current sheriff, that was his desire, is to do that. Now, whether that means if the money and the contingency disappeared, we reduced the staffing over there by 1, whether it's another deputy that went or myself, there's ways to do that to make it happen because I think it's that valuable.
Okay. Any other questions for Jim?
Positioning funding moving forward with the millage dollars, is there a timeline for you then if you decide that, say I'm done?
We used to tell my wife, she'd always ask how the day was going, whether it was a good day. I'm just one bad day away from retirement. You guys have been very supportive to me. I've had an extremely good career. I've been at the sheriff's office. I've been working for the county since 1978. So that's when everything came in black and white. I worked 2 years prior to that.
so there's no requirement to have a director?
You'll have to answer that question because I don't know the answer to that. The millage doesn't require that.
The millage doesn't require it. What have you done thus far to provide and facilitate the operation of the drug task force in your absence, rather of a director, but also your absence?
That's early discussions with the drug board meetings that we've had.
Okay.
You know, the one thing I do want you to know is the public relations that we had by this position that I'm occupying now kept the politics out of working with all the other local agencies. And I think that's part of the reason why it's gone so well.
So a large part of your time is spent talking with the other law enforcement agencies?
It can be. It's just trying to make a path. So I've always had, even when I was at the sheriff department, drug unit is county operated. And I think I put in there about the fact that the staffing there, the deputies are deputies from the sheriff department. It isn't because there isn't a good city officer out there. It could be a valuable asset. Most small agencies, the largest has 6 members. We really couldn't afford to lose somebody for 2 years, even if we paid for them, and then be able to assume and take them back at the end of a couple of years.
Yeah.
And most of your smaller departments are making more than the deputies. That would be another compelling reason.
Thank you for your time, Jim. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Great job.
Okay, moving on. Our next presentation will be from Chairman of the Parks Commission, Roger Ballard. You're gonna get up to the podium?
Thank you.
No, our park knowledge is up this year and will hopefully be on the ballot this year. I've been chairman of the Parks Board for, I don't even know, I quit counting, I think 11 or 12 years now. It's always been my intention to kind of maintain a steady balance between providing amenities for campers because they do provide revenue, but also provide amenities for day use for our taxpayers because they also provide revenue through the millage. And I think we've been pretty successful over the years. Our parks have definitely grown. Our budget this year, I believe, is about 1.3 million. Back in about 15 years ago, we were 805 or so. And it's grown steadily. We've had a couple of little ups and downs, but for the most part, it's stayed pretty steady. Over the last 4 years, our revenues totaled $4,535,755.12. Our expenses were $3,985,466 for a net gain of $550,289. This year's or 2021's numbers are not quite complete. We still have some expenses out there that will get billed to last year. Revenue numbers should be pretty close. We've done a lot of projects over the last 4 years. At Forester Park, we've done over $560,000 in sewer and electric upgrades. That park never had septic hookups until we instituted this program, and it was quite a project, but it was well worth it. Definitely upped the revenues, made for a lot of happy campers, and we've added on since then. Electric upgrades have really made a big difference out there. We've had complaints. Of course, people with these big campers, they plug in their extra freezers and refrigerators and all that stuff, and we were blowing breakers and everything, but that's helped, and that's significantly reduced complaints on that. We had a small lot at the southeast corner of Forester that needed a seawall. We put that in this past year to avoid any further erosion. Made the neighbors happy because the one neighbor had already put one in that was actually sucking dirt from around their seawall. So we got that in just in time. As you might remember, we lost the Octagon Gazebo in 2019 to a storm. Our excellent insurance coverage paid for that, or insurance coverage, I should say, covered the cost of that. And we did some additional upgrades on that to the electric to make it more user-friendly for reunions, and it's safer outside. We added some lighting and redid some sidewalks. That whole project was about $306,000, with just under $10,000 coming from park funds. We did a structural project on the roof and on the roof and the dormer at Forester, on the office and the residence. That roof looked like it was going to fall in. The dormer was sagging, so we got that done, and that was $68,700. Out at Evergreen, and that's not totally inclusive of everything done at Forester. There's constant road maintenance out there. Our road commission's real good to work with us and providing materials and the labor at a very good rate. We could not get that done privately for what they charge us. At Evergreen, we did some sewer and electric upgrades to the tune of $125,000 plus. Added some more electric to some sites and some septic to more sites. We're looking to do the North Loop, I call it, of the park, which is an additional 61 sites. And that, if we get sewer into those, that would make that park 100% full hookup, which is kind of unheard of in a campground. We did some work on the pond out there. The slope for the beach area was a little bit steep, so we got that fixed up last year. we're hoping the pond will fill itself back up now. We did upgrades at Evergreen's bathrooms to the tune of just under $12,000. And at Lexington Park, we did some electric upgrades. We put some electric into the rustic sites so people could plug in all their electronic devices and have a quick pot of coffee. We did sewer to, I believe it was 20 or 22 sites out there at Lexington. I didn't have that file available when I did this report. And another thing, it sounds like a small item, but picnic tables, we're still on upgrading all of the picnic tables to a better quality frame. And we've put some in probably, 6-8 years ago, and they're holding up much better than the old ones. Over the course of this last millage, we spent about $11,000 just on frames. That didn't include the wood. And we have several projects in the works for the parks. Working on a grant project for Evergreen right now that will include a kayak launch, a couple of pavilions, some very nice handicap accessible playground equipment, putt-putt golf course. And that thing, the preliminary numbers right now are rated about $600,000, of which we're going to apply for a maximum grant amount of $300,000 for that project. Our grant coordinator for the DNR, something that she did was unheard of, was actually make a phone call and remind us to get our application, and she feels highly that this grant will be accepted. So, and I do too, due to the mainly to the kayak launch and the ADA accessibility of it. Lexington, Lexington, we're doing conversion over to natural gas. That whole project's about $35,000. At this time, I have an RFP out for bids for a stairway to the north side of the park, which has been destroyed by ice and weather and age. And also for an ADA accessible boardwalk on the south side of the park, where there will be a accessible pathway down to this boardwalk, a shelter on the end of it, so people can go out in a wheelchair and sit and enjoy the view of the lake and watch the ships go by and whatnot. So anticipating those bids coming back here by the 17th of February. We also have an ADA bathhouse addition we're doing. I have a RFP out right now for engineering services on that. That will partially be funded by the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation grant that Representative Beeler received for us for $20,000. I anticipate that project probably around $55,000 or $60,000. So we'll know better once we get our engineering costs in. And we also received a grant for Forester. We haven't put that out for bid yet, and that's playground equipment. The grant was for $80,200, so the total project will be $160,400 for that playground equipment. And then we're going to take an existing piece out there and move it to the north end of the park. So that's about it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Question. You mentioned the ADA bathhouse addition.
Yep.
Was it Evergreen?
Lexington.
The parks as a whole, in regards to bathrooms and bathhouses, are we staying with the traditional understanding of separate facilities for men and women, as has been done here in America for hundreds of years, or are we doing something new?
Well, actually, we did a very similar, it'll probably be just about an exact footprint of one up in Forester several years ago. It's a unisex ADA accessible bathroom.
That means it's a single stall or a single.
Yep, just single unit.
And that you would need multiple of those, right?
No, that satisfies with our other bathhouses there, or one other bathhouse. It has ADA accessible, but the north bathhouse did not. So we wanted to put one up there and did. Now Lexington has never had an ADA accessible bathroom, period. Mm-hmm. And with our day use there, beachgoers and whatnot, we're in desperate need.
What you're describing is like what I'm familiar with, like a family use bathroom. Anybody can use it, or yeah, right. Okay, so that's good. The bathhouse itself, are we talking about showers and
Yeah,
stuff like that, but those are separate.
this is going to be an add-on to that building.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, it didn't have a
It's never had
bathroom.
accessibility
Okay.
for that part. So we're way overdue. And we're fortunate to get this grant because that 20,000 gives us a little booster shot that we can, it was on our radar for 2023 in our 5-year plan.
I have a couple
So
other
we
questions as
moved it up
well.
a year.
I know we talked about this before, probably quite some time, but you mentioned about day use because taxpayers are paying for that just by the virtue of we've got a millage. What's the percentage of use of the facilities for camping purposes, not day use, that are from out of towners, not residents of?
Generally, it runs about 50-50.
It is about 50-50.
Yes. And that
So-
seems to be the trend for all the parks.
And I don't know if you addressed this before, but is there a preference for in-county residents to be able to reserve?
No.
So we don't have anything that allows them to have a preference.
But like first come, first serve.
And that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
No, but county, no, they do not. We're not going to kick somebody out from the out of county area.
Do you see an increase in out of county use? Because camping's taken off like
Oh,
crazy in the
absolutely.
last few years.
That shows in our
As we
revenues.
move forward into the future, do you see the possibility of increasing out of county campers where that 50-50 is becomes 70-30 and so on?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. It's been the trend for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time where residents complained about, hey, I can't even use my own darn park?
Oh, every year.
What's usually the basis?
Every
for that?
year.
They're not fast
Just-
enough on the
well,
draw, or
Not fast enough, or of course, the big thing is holiday weekends, special event weekends. They all fill up first.
yeah.
And we have an online reservation system. And this year, we did up our rates. We're still very affordable and much cheaper than some of the campgrounds. And we also now require full payment up front.
Yeah, you mentioned
Because
that.
the issue we were having was people would make a reservation, pay their $35 deposit or whatever one day was. And if the weather was bad or something came up, they just didn't show up because they were only out $35. So then there's that site sitting there. Nobody's on it. You don't know if they're coming or not. Well, they do have at a certain point, they will rent it out. If they have a list, they keep a list of names and they'll call people up. And if somebody shows up the second day when they should already been there, too bad. I'm sorry. You should have called. So
You mentioned the day use and you're making improvements to add on to day use, like equipment and stuff like that. The putt-putt golf would be for day use as well.
sure. Yep.
Do you see that being used a lot?
Yeah.
I know Lexington has that day use
Yep.
park to the north of it, right across the ravine. And you do have that bridge there makes it accessible. Honestly, Roger, I stop by there, oh my gosh, a couple times a month. And I don't see a whole lot of movement over there on that day use. Is it being used to?
Yeah. On the north side.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot.
Oh,
of there.
last year, after that stairway went out, it was crazy on the south side.
Yeah.
Because you had all them people wanting to use the beach and
Yeah.
only one stairway down.
Yeah.
They didn't want to park on the north side. So they're all trying to park on the south side. So they didn't have to walk.
Mhm.
So, it gets used. Yes, absolutely.
Well, what I mean is like,
And the pavilions get used.
I guess I'm just not there at the proper times, right? What about the tennis courts and the facilities over there? They're quite dated.
We actually took one tennis court out, put a basketball court in. I've been looking at ideas for that because there's a lot of land there.
Yeah, as you go to the west, right?
Yeah. I've thought about dog parks. That seems to be something people have an interest in, to take their dogs out. In fact, we're always open to suggestions.
Can you add additional sites over there, or
We haven't
would be
explored that
rustic?
yet. That we'd have to go through the township first, which is fine, but yeah. That'd be an expensive proposition too, for as few sites as we could get in, but definitely, I think doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we still have Delaware Park too. That would be that's our diamond in the rough up there. That would be the premier campground, probably on the old Lake Huron
You
Trail.
don't say. That's the one I haven't gone to. It seems like every time I'm up that way, it looks, I don't know if it's closed or it just looks like nobody's down there.
You have to drive down the
Yeah.
road because you can't, there's a curve and you can't see anything.
I'm gonna make a point of going there.
Yeah, go there on a hot July day and then
Yeah.
see what's down there. There's 1,500 feet of beach down on that
Okay.
part, beautiful beach. Those would be $100 sites up on the bluff overlooking the
Yeah.
lake. So that's my goal before I'm done with this park is to get Delaware started.
We're going to hold you to that.
Yeah, please do. I'll hold you to that too.
Good report, Roger. Is there any further questions
Thank you.
related to the presentation?
No, just as a user of the park, I commend the board for the improvements that continue.
Thank you.
It's great to see that when you go there, that it's better than it was. And a lot of people that come to the area that I know, comment on how nice the parks are, whether it's Evergreen or Forester or Lexington. And like Joel said earlier, biggest thing is it's tough to get in sometimes, but
And that's the case with any
yeah,
park,
well, that's right. But
not just ours.
good for you, bad for us.
Yeah.
Bad for the
Yep.
campers. in some
Roger, now
cases.
that I serve on the Parks and Recreation, I would personally never give the thought of charging people out of county more money. If we get a 50-50
We can.
ratio right now, because that would immediately tell them we don't want you. We need to.
No, receiving grant funding that we do from the state, they would not probably allow that.
But there's something to be said about if the numbers creep up where you've got, the gentrification of this property that is paid for out of the residents and they just have a difficult time accessing it.
Mhm.
But clearly, when the phone line opens up for reservations, everyone has an equal opportunity, right?
Yeah,
To
they do.
gain access to it. So,
And actually, the county residents are more aware of that than out of county. So, oh yeah, Monday, they're there the first business day after New Year's. That phone's nonstop and it really hasn't quit ringing yet for any of the parks. So that's a good thing.
All right, any further questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have Shannon Kruger from Veterans Affairs. The floor is yours.
There's not a length requirement on these presentations, right? Because I can't follow
Yeah.
these two.
You got 3 minutes.
2 minutes, 30 seconds, I will be done.
no.
So obviously looking for my millage wording to get put back on the ballot again. It'll be a renewal. It's been in effect since 1998. And we've always had a great voter approval for my millage. I provide you guys with I think a pretty in-depth annual report each fall.
Yes, you do.
My numbers.
We've
all the
referenced
things
it
we
many
do.
times.
Yes, well, that's good. That's good. So I didn't want to rehash all the stuff I've already presented to you. So I thought I'd just pick a couple individual things that help individual veterans with millage or from millage dollars. Our transportation program is a really big thing for our county veterans that is paid for with our millage dollars. We've had 2 veterans recently over the summer and this past fall that both were having cancer treatment. One was getting his treatment down in Ann Arbor, VA. He wasn't able to drive to or from. He would get dropped off on a Monday and picked up on a Friday. He didn't have family to take him, nor could he drive after the treatments. So we were able to utilize our vans to take him and pick him up. Another one, we had an older veteran. His wife could not drive. He again could not drive while receiving treatment. He don't know what he would have done had we not been able to transport him to his chemo and radiation appointments. So again, without having these millage dollars, we would not be able to provide this transportation. A lot of the older veterans that completely utilize the VA Medical Center benefits for their health care, they can get primary care appointments around here in Bad Axe and Yale, but if they have to see any sort of specialty doctors down either Saginaw, Ann Arbor, Detroit, and a lot of our veterans are older now. They don't like to drive in the city. They don't utilize a lot of supplemental health care because they have the VA to provide their medical stuff. So if we couldn't get them to the VA hospital, they have, way more out of pocket for medical expenses to seek that care around here without us driving them. Our Soldiers Relief Fund, just recently, it's for emergent situations. You have to qualify for it, but we had a veteran that had a health issue. He was not able to go to work for, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. He had no short-term disability, fell behind on his monthly bills. And we were able to help him after he applied to get current on his bills. He was able to go back to work and he was caught up and be able to, stay current on everything. We would have some money to put towards our relief fund. without having a millage, but we're able to put a lot more towards that to help more veterans since we do have our millage. The last thing is that I want to mention is our burial flag cases for the U.S. flags that all veterans are presented when the veteran passes away. We give cases now to the family members. The appreciation and most time tears in the family's eyes when we give them cases is, you just can't, no words can explain it.
Sure.
And those, again, would not be possible without our millage dollars.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Shannon. Is there any questions for Shannon?
Where are we at now?
3.
Okay.
We have a 4th one in the summer when he's not, or when he's not teaching. So in case of vacation and stuff, he can come.
I just have a question. That relief fund to help them in emergencies,
Mhm.
do they have to like deplete their savings and everything before they get help?
It's individualized.
Okay,
So we had one recently, he had $1,600 in the bank. He was saving, and he noticeably had bad teeth. He was trying to save up to get dentures, and he applied for assistance. He noted to me, and he applied for the benefit, got home, 20 minutes later, he seriously must have walked into our call. He says, I have to be honest with you, I do have some more money in the bank I didn't tell you. So I wrote it down and I told the committee, and they considered that, and we gave him help.
So your millage request, roughly $340,000 a year is what it raises, right?
Correct.
And how much do you have left at the end of the year to pack away for future use?
Depends on a year. I think I was running a fund balance of maybe 80,000. But I like to have some in there. So when I'm trading vehicles in,
Has that been the way it's been going for the last, say, couple of years in terms of a fund balance?
I've had
carryover?
more, but that last couple of years because of COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, people had money coming in where they didn't apply for our soldiers relief fund, and nobody was going to the doctors, so I didn't have to pay my drivers. I have gas money for, the transportation program. So the past couple of years are different, but normally maybe 50, maybe less a normal year.
No,
Just depends.
the millage, the language talks about assistance, support services, the equipment to operate.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you would like to do that you haven't yet been able to accomplish without foregoing what your existing mission statement is?
Well, I'm always looking for new programs we can implement. Currently, I don't have anything on my agenda.
Yeah.
But yeah, if something comes my way that I think will benefit our veterans, then I would always look to see if we can implement it and bring it to you guys to see if.
There hasn't been anything that you haven't had the funds in which to consider doing, or?
Not since this past millage was an increase. Without that increase, we had to stop our monthly newsletters. We couldn't afford it because of postage.
So this has been a very successful period of
Yes.
time where everything that you set out to accomplish has been accomplished. No need for additional funding that you've noted.
Not in addition to what we're receiving, correct?
Okay. I have nothing else to ask.
Okay, if there's nothing further, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
The work you do is important and we appreciate it. Moving on to 13A, we have nothing in 13B, 14, or 15. So we are going to move on to committee reports, and we will start with Commissioner Wyatt.
Okay, so we have personnel and policy regarding the policy committee. We have that on the docket to discuss later on. I won't go into that. We'll talk about that. Was there anything else at the policy committee? I don't recall that being the case.
Yep.
Personnel, Gary and I met with the personnel committee. We talked about several cases of the need to hire, both existing vacancies and for temporary purposes and for future vacancies coming forward. We got the prosecutor's office needing to hire a temporary employee due to some shortages in their office on a temporary basis. Clerk's office is anticipating future retirements that are actually going to happen. And it involves individuals and positions that they really need to carry on that brain trust to someone new. So we recommend that go ahead and do that so they have a month or so to be able to train those new people. Trial court replacing a magistrate clerk. It was, when we're in these meetings asking them about these positions, because if you recall, this was a policy that was amended and changed two and a half years ago. for all new positions for it to go before the personnel committee and, ostensibly to talk with the department managers and say, is there another way to skin this cat? Is there a way that we can reduce perhaps the employee footprints, the FTEs, but have some cost savings, job sharing, whatever the case is. And we do spend some time asking those questions. They're asked point blank whether this is a position that absolutely needs to be filled, And so far, we haven't come up with any anybody saying, no, you don't need that position. I guess that's to be expected, but we're asking those questions and we're taking into consideration the things they're saying. And I think it's useful to continue on with this policy and to ask these questions of these positions as we go forward, because it gives us a better understanding of what they do. It's a good session to understand the work that's being done in these various departments and the need for those employee or positions to continue. So yeah, the magistrate clerk needs to be filled because they have one other magistrate clerk and they need to continue on with that. So that's about all I got. Gary, anything in addition?
No, that was a good recap of our meeting, last meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. Roger?
As I stated, Parks, we have a lot going on. We are in the process of hiring some new positions and we're interviewing. That's really about it. I had my first CMH meeting this afternoon at 5.
Okay. I myself had a Save Council meeting 2 weeks ago. It was my initiation to that board. I don't really have much to report on that. We had ARPA earlier today. I think we've pretty well covered what we learned in that so far through our meeting. The Board of Health was supposed to meet this morning, couldn't meet a quorum, so we're trying to reschedule for later this week. That is all I have. So, Gary?
Well, I covered most of mine in my commission reports, but one thing I did leave out is back early January, we got a request from a former commissioner and former state rep from here in county that's working on the FEMA floodplains. And so I attended the meeting with Todd Hillman, because he's our Sand Lake County Emergency Director. And in a nutshell, and I sent some of my information that I gathered to Tara, and I can copy you on the commission that too. Basically, what FEMA is doing right now, they're trying to grow and grow more income. So about 3 years ago, they started with this floodplain expansion around the thumb of Michigan in Lake Huron and Saginaw Bay. And basically what they're trying to do in a nutshell, they're trying to expand the floodplain inward of our shorelines. And one of the townships has signed off on it, as I understand, in Sand Lake County Township. But the rest of them, we don't want to do that because basically they're creating a new floodplain to gain more money. And it costs 3 times as much to build a home because of the specifications. And second of all, guess who gives floodplain insurance? FEMA, right? So we're in attempts of fighting this, and we had I wasn't part of the meeting. Lisa McLean's office and Cole Wood and a couple other people had a call in with Lisa McLean last week and given their input and got input back from her and what actions can be taken to basically fight this expansion of the floodplain along the Lake Huron shoreline, including Saginaw Bay and around the top of the thumb. So as we get more into this and I get more information, obviously I'll pass this along. I know that I had a constituent from Port Sanilac call me because I guess you covered it a little bit in the last meeting. So I sent him the information and he said whatever he could do to help. Obviously, he lives on, I believe, on the east side of N25, and he's nowhere near a floodplain. So I sent him the information I had. So, and like Todd Hillman said, if the water's crest M25 with a 30-foot drop, we're all in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
So their definition of a floodplain is, I don't know if it's expanded, but always included erosion that's due to the rise and fall of water
Not
levels.
so much erosion, just I guess
That's the only thing that affects us on that area.
Exactly.
I mean, I had a floodplain down in Harrison Township because it was in a floodplain, and you would have water in your doorsteps, right? But this is completely different.
Yeah. Well, Kurt, what was Kurt's last name? Demerol.
I sat through that.
Yeah, and basically, he was telling in the meeting I was in, there was a home that is near him in Huron County, and it sets like 30 foot above the floodplain, because on a hill, they want to include that, so it's far reaching. I mean, we got to pay attention, folks, because big government wants to, make more money, and they're going to find ways to do it in the middle of the night when we're sleeping.
I've told all my districts to keep their eyes and ears open for news on this, because I heard some crazy numbers.
Yeah.
And
I'll keep everyone abreast on that, because Kurt is involved with a lot of stuff, and he's on top of this thing. So I give him credit,
I believe they said they added 10 homes in Forestville.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
That would be included, and they're sitting on a bluff.
Yes, they are sitting on a bluff. Yeah.
Yeah, but
And if they're in that floodplain, then they're insured. If they're financed, they have to get flood insurance.
yes, they do.
Which is a ridiculous amount.
Or prove that they're not.
Yeah, or prove they're not in the
It's,
floodplain.
and how could they prove that they're not? Because I know
Right.
what was involved for myself is I had to take benchmarks of my elevation compared to the existing, level of water, and then show them that I was, 6 inches out of the floodplain for the threshold of my door. I remember that very clearly. It was a lot of work. I had to hire a surveyor and everything.
Mhm.
Now, in the end, it saved me a considerable amount of money. But, silly me, had I actually had a flood, I would have been, a little bit out of luck, I suppose. But these are houses on a bluff. I don't understand that.
Well, Gary summed it up. It's a power grab.
And Kurt is going to be sending us more information, and he hasn't rescheduled a second meeting yet. But the one question I asked him, when we get in good, solid information, because there was some good, solid information in that meeting, but something we could put on an 8.5, 11 paper and put it in the newspaper. So, all the constituents are aware of what's going on.
How does McLean sit on it?
She's totally against it.
He's okay.
Yeah,
Well, good.
yeah, totally against it.
Okay.
Totally against expanding floodplain.
Correct. Okay, good.
Don't make that comment. I'm done. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for being a contact point on that.
Well, that's okay. I reached out to John. John was going to go and he couldn't go. He had other commitments, so ended up going. So I enjoyed it. It was great information. And yeah.
How's the burger?
What's that?
How's the burger?
Oh yeah, we did get a free burger.
I got to watch them eat on
The
TV.
meeting went on so long because Lisa McLean was on there, and so I don't know what time was it. 1 o'clock. The meeting, I forgot what
Yeah,
time.
it started at 11.
Anyway, we're all getting hungry, so when the TV or the camera wasn't on, we all ordered, and I kept asking the waitress for a bill, and she said it goes like that. So at the end, I said, "So Kurt, are we paying or you pay?" He said, "I'll pay. You get the tip." So we all tip. Yeah.
Good deal. Thank you for being there. Commissioner Sarkelli, your committee report?
Attended the HDC in Carroll last week, sat through their audit presentation. They have an unmodified audit with zero debt. At one point in time in the last 5 years, they were over $1 million in debt. And just some tidbits from them. They served 50,000 senior meals last year, along with packing 40,000 food boxes. And we volunteered one morning a couple weeks ago to see the food box process with Senator Daley's staff. So my wife and I went over there. We packed 250 boxes in the morning. Normally it would take their crew a whole day to do that, but it's just amazing how much food goes through there. And then one last thing we did was we renewed the executive director's contract for 5 years. For Offenbecker, she does an excellent job, and she deserved a pay raise, but she stayed the same as everybody else there and only took $1. And so I commend her for that, and they do a lot of good work. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We have none, so we'll move on to new business, finance administration, starting with Nfa009-22, approval of current claims.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of current claims for 2021 identified on the accounts payable report dated January 18th, 2022 for the general bank account in the amount of $67,835.78.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion from Bill and support from Roger. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Moving on to A009-22, approval of current claims for 2022.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of current claims for 2022 identified on the accounts payable report dated January 18th, 2022 for the general bank account in the amount of $98,502.98.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion from Bill, support from Gary. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to Nfa010-22 budget adoptions, amendments, appropriations, and transfers.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following amendments and establishes the following accounts as presented.
Support. We have a motion from Bill and support from Roger. Is there any discussion? None, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to Fa011-22, approval of additional general fund bank account checks charged to December 2021.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of additional general fund bank account checks charged to December 2021 as follows: $289,220.71 in payments, $138,493.70 in checks for a total of $427,714.41.
We have a motion from Bill. Is there support?
Support.
Support from Gary. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to Nfa002-22, schedule a public hearing for the Planning Commission.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby schedules a public hearing on February 15th, 2022 at 1 p.m. for the purpose of receiving comments for the removal of a planning commission member. Further authorizes the board secretary to publish the public notice in the county newspaper of record.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion from Bill and support from Gary. Is there any discussion on this topic?
I don't have discussion. I just like to add to it. We didn't want to make this a big deal. Publicly, obviously it has to go in a public record, but we had a member of the planning commission, and you're in that planning commission too, just quit showing up. We couldn't get a hold of the person. We couldn't make any contact with them. So I come to Tara and ask her what the next step was, and that's why it's on the agenda today.
Yep, good person, just can't reach him, and without a letter of resignation, we're forced to do this in order to move forward. So any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Move on to Nfa003-22, acceptance of the 2021 Annual Planning Commission report.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby accepts the 2021 Annual Planning Commission report as printed.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, support from Roger. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to Nfa004-22, approval of drug task force millage renewal language.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following drug task force millage ballot question language and directs the clerk to submit the language to be placed on the August 2nd, 2022 primary election ballot.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill, and I'll give that support to Roger. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Moving on to Nfa005-22, approval of Parks millage language.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following Parks millage ballot question language and directs the clerk to submit the language to be placed on the August 2nd, 2022 primary election ballot.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion from Bill, support from Gary. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to Nfa006-22, approval of Veterans Affairs millage language. Veterans Affairs.
The Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following Veterans Affairs millage ballot question language and directs the clerk to submit the language to be placed on the August 2nd, 2022 primary election ballot.
Support.
We have a motion from Bill and support from Roger. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. For everyone that came to present here today, we appreciate your time. Moving on to Nfa007-22, adoption of amended COVID-19 sick leave policy.
Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners hereby adopts the amended COVID-19 sick leave policy as follows.
So we have a motion from Bill and support from Joel. Is there discussion?
Yes,
Pass it-
I would like to,
Take a look at this.
yeah, I was gonna say I'd like to hear from Commissioner Wyatt.
So we had a pretty good discussion about this particular policy in regards to how can we move forward as a benefit to the employees who did diligently work through this period of COVID. And the existing policy ended last June, the end of June, right? And from that point forward, there was no provisions for any sick leave specifically carved out for COVID. Didn't really have a whole lot of issue because we didn't have a whole lot of COVID. We were all led to believe that, or understood that probably this is about the end of it. Well, that turned out to be clearly not the case. And it came to, I'd say, the administration's attention, late in December, that there's a need that we could do such a thing. However, it wasn't mandated and required as it was previously. That's how this policy came about, was in response to the federal requirements. It was federal or state? Federal, wasn't it?
Department of Labor.
Yeah, that's federal. So we took the method of just simply looking at the policy and revising it and implementing it as such. So we did take a look at it. We changed the language as you see here. However, there was a concern. I know that I vocalized it at the initial meeting and the policy committee discussed it in depth. And it's come to our attention that we'd like to have the opportunity to provide COVID sick time, specifically carved out for COVID, for that period of time in which this policy expired. So it'd be from June of last year until the present. And in order to do so, it would require some kind of changes to people's existing sick time. It doesn't involve a whole lot of folks, but there's a few of them, right? And I think that because it was a federal requirement from the Department of Labor, we would carry forward that in the good spirit of helping these employees out. So we've got the yellow sheet there that describes the method by which we would provide credits to those who had used sick time specifically for COVID. They would show a proof of being positively ill with COVID that coincides with their sick time. And they would receive a vacation. Let's not conflate sick time with vacation. That's how we got in this first place. A credit for their sick time to be used moving forward. So, yeah, go ahead.
You're not done.
I think I'm done.
Okay, so I think it's a good gesture. What I'm seeing here is a good gesture on the part of the county commissioners because we're not in a COVID pandemic and not mandated by federal mandate. And clearly, as you said, we thought COVID would be the end and it spiked again. And I think you're correct. It's starting to taper back off. So the dates you're looking at is going back retroactive to basically what?
July 1st.
July 1st.
Yeah.
Until what? July 1st?
Today, essentially. With the implementation of the policy as presented, we will go forward from this point on, offering, I believe we have it roughly 80 hours of COVID specific sick time, whereby if you're sick with COVID, you show a presentation of that proof, and you would pull that out of that particular sick bank until, we had put down here until what, June 30th, right? June 30th, 31st.
So the sick days would be how many days we'll give? We're gonna
80 hours.
80 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. 80 hours.
That's roughly 10 days.
10 days.
Yeah. And now we know you can be vaccinated and come down with COVID.
Mhm.
We know that that it happens, and it happens to people more than once. So that's what we're dealing with going forward. But the point should be noted. I don't have any expectation after the termination of this policy to carry that on moving forward, but rather the expectation that employees recognize that their sick time is valuable. They should use it for the purpose of sick time as it was entrusted to them, and it shouldn't be frivolous with it. But what's interesting to note is quite often many of us would show up maybe a little bit sick because we're not so sick that we can't do our work right. Well, that's got to stop. And it took this COVID and the Department of Labor mandating that, you got COVID, you don't come to work. to bring that across. So if you're sick, stay home, use your sick pay. That's what it's there for. And then come back when you're not showing symptoms.
So I have three questions to the personnel committee that need to be answered. So if the person comes down with COVID and they have to have proof, right, from a doctor, not a home test, right?
Right.
Okay. Number two, so what if they can work from home? Because we passed that resolution or that policy too. So are we going to pay them to work from home and pay them sick pay?
Well, no,
No.
that wouldn't be a sick.
I just want to clarify that. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, so this brings up a good, I'm sure someone's going to ask about, what do you mean that my home test doesn't count? Listen, we're being encouraged left and right for people to get home tests. And I would never advocate that you are relatively okay and that you show up at a hospital or something to get a COVID test, even though your COVID test at home said that you're positive. I would think that if you felt sick and you took a COVID test, a home kit, I mean, the federal government's handing them out now, and it turned up positive, that would be, sufficient notification for that to be used to access this sick day. The only problem we have is, going back, we're not going to be able to accept, I would say, home kits because we have no way to validate the date. But when you're sick today and you say you're sick with COVID and you've got a positive case from home, I don't see, geez, I would hate to say that doesn't count, Gary. You say if you're positive, go to the doctor and get an official.
We have drive-through at McKenzie Hospital.
So that would be the advice if you want to take advantage of that to do so.
I think it should be done officially like that, not a home test. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're inconclusive, number one. That's been stated. We know that, right?
Can I make a comment while we're on this?
Please.
The proposed policy does not include having to seek a healthcare professional's testing. So we will need to amend that.
Yeah.
Is there another way to validate? Because, if they want to take a sick day and they've got a positive test, whether or not they have symptoms is irrelevant, right? I mean, that's not what we're writing in the policy. So if that's the case, how do we validate that test was done at that time if it's a home kit?
You can't. It could be the same picture of a test, the test results that.
Well, they could take a test results picture with, I don't
They're all
know.
the same kits, right? If we're getting them from the federal government,
How do you get a timestamp? Could it be from a picture from your cell phone of the positive test? I mean, I remember back in the day, you take a picture of yourself with the local paper. That would give you a timestamp, right?
I understand that. And that's exactly why I'm advocating that they go to a doctor or go to a local hospital and get it. And let's be honest with everyone in here and ourselves. I've had friends that went and got a COVID test. They tested positive. They got a second opinion from another test from another doctor and they didn't have it, So there's some inconclusive, I guess, that, going to a doctor versus taking your own test. But I would encourage that we mandate that it comes from a doctor.
That cost is borne by the health insurance, correct?
for the most part, the health insurance is covering the testing.
For the most part.
I thought that was mandatory, like effective
Yeah, unless they change it. I
2
mean,
weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, unless they change it.
Commissioner White, one other question for you or Tara. What's been a COVID number since July 1st? So we've got 6 months of history. Do we have a number? Because I don't think they're that great in our county
Do you mean
buildings
just
anyway.
for employees who?
For
have
employees,
tested
yeah,
positive?
yeah.
Well, I know of 12.
How many? 12? Okay. So we can probably expect close to that number between now and
Mhm.
July
That
1st.
doesn't include the sheriff's office, so I don't know if they've had positive tests over there.
So total, if the number stayed the same, we have no idea if they're going to. So we're looking at least 24 sick pay, 80-hour sick pay, right?
Possibly.
If we go this route.
So you're saying we need to have some method that is documentable that test was taken on that day that correlates with that sick day, right?
Yeah.
And the best way to do so is to go to either a medical facility or someplace that gives you a written document that says on this day you tested. Yes.
I'm sure they give some type of receipt.
I'm fine with that. Bill, you made the most as an MFA.
Yeah, so procedurally, if I'm hearing you gentlemen correctly, we're potentially going to offer a friendly amendment to Bill for the motion to add, to approve this sick leave policy with the addition of that the positive test or proof of positive must come from a healthcare provider. And then as well, if we want to include this in it, I believe we should suspend the rules, add this as NFA009-22 to the agenda, and then have this approved separately.
Yes, I agree.
So,
that'll be my motion.
okay, so you're offering a friendly amendment to Bill. Bill, do you accept the friendly amendment of requiring the test proof positive to come from a healthcare provider for the Sanilac County COVID-19 sick leave policy?
Yes.
And Commissioner Wyatt, do you accept of that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and support to accept the written COVID-19 sick leave policy with the addition that the test and proof of positive must come from a healthcare provider. Is there further discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and to add NFA 009-22 to our agenda under new business today.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion of support. Is there discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. At this time, we will move on to NFA 008-22. Authorization.
I think we should do a roll call, adding that.
Okay, yep, sure.
Okay, so Commissioner Sarkella,
Yes.
Commissioner Ballard,
Yes.
Commissioner Wyatt,
Yes.
Chairman Block,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hewitt.
Yes,
Forgive me, John, but I thought the last did we actually read the motion itself? Yeah. NFA.
No, so this will be the last thing on our
Oh,
agenda.
at 09. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know we're moving it away from
Yes.
the topic we were just at,
That
but
did confuse me a little bit.
yeah, I just was trying to find a place to put it.
22-009. Yes.
I was trying to preemptively figure out what was gonna shake out there.
You were on point.
So Leslie, you believe we're set with that?
Set with that.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you for your help. Okay, so at this point, we are at NFA 008-22, authorization for easement on county-owned property.
Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes an easement for the purpose of accessing a DTE utility pole. The easement will be between the county-owned property on Moore Road, parcel number 200-031-030-030-00, and the property located at 3765 Moore Road, parcel number 200-031-400-04000. The county will not be liable for any costs associated with the easement creation and clearing of easement right of way.
support.
Okay, we have a motion from Bill and support from Gary. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I wrote a letter I looked through this language and first of all, I want to tell you, and I think I put an email to everyone, I'm in complete agreement. I believe I even talked to you, Jim, I talked to Paul Rich, excuse me, their sheriff. I'm in full agreement with what's going on here and giving full approval. However, my thoughts are, and I put it in the email that I sent to all of you, the local real estate agent that's building the home, he's going to put a home there and he could sell a thing down the road. I don't know if that's his intention. He could retire, move to Florida. The problem I see, a potential problem coming down the road, we've all seen people move up from Metro Detroit, out of Detroit. They want to be next to the farm. They want to smell that fresh air. And a year later, they're suing the township and suing the owner because of noise, smell, whatever else. My concern is, and it don't affect this NFA, I get that. But I want you to realize that we've got to take a look at down the road. If this real estate agent sells that home in 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, and someone moves up to that area, buys that home and is anti-gun, anti-noise, whatever, the first thing they're going to do is say, hey, we don't like that gun range beside our home, and they could sue the township. They could sue it'd be in this case, probably the county. We need to be prepared for that. And if there's any way around that we can elude that having to come to pass, I think this is the time we need to discuss it right now. And I don't know if there's a law that we can put in place or something we can ask the local real estate agent to add that to his commitment to the fire. And maybe we can't get away with beating around it. I don't know.
I think it's a valid point that you brought up, but I think it also goes without saying that anybody can litigate anybody for anything at any time. And so I would certainly hope whoever is selling that house would notify the new tenant that they're buying a home next to a gun range.
Mhm.
You know?
And legally, Commissioner Block, there's probably nothing we can do about it. But I just want to bring up the fact it could happen. We've
Right.
seen it happen all over with people moving up from the city and want to be part of the farm, but they don't want the smell of the farm. And the next thing they're doing is suing the township and the owner,
Right.
Well, in light of that, the only thing we're doing is providing an easement that saves them a couple of bucks, right?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah.
We're saving them roughly $7,000. If he didn't want that easement, he would go ahead with the home and we wouldn't even be having this discussion. But the same concern that you're expressing would be present in the future or not present in the future. I do have a problem that where is this guy? Why isn't he here making his presentation? He's asking for us to make an easement, to provide an easement, and whatever work and time it takes, he's not present to answer any questions. So I, for one, have no interest in passing this on until such time that Mr. Stock, is it? No.
I was trying
Tank.
to leave his name on.
Yeah, until Mr. Tank would like to, present himself so that we could ask some cogent questions about it, because, the whole point here is to save them a few bucks, and I'm okay with doing that. I would do that for any member of the community, but it's reasonable for us to be able to ask him a couple of questions. So for that purpose, I would say we postpone this.
Commissioner Wyatt, I don't think he was asked to come. He's very credible in our community.
Okay.
And I don't think he was asked to come. So I don't look at it as a big deal though,
Are they building a hunting lodge or what?
They're building a casino, I
It's
think.
it's H&T. It's H&T Hunt Club.
Yeah, it
Is
is.
the property owner.
Mhm.
So I don't know that.
I would imagine that's who he's buying it from, maybe? No,
I don't know.
I don't know.
If I could mention too, I did have a conversation with Mr. Tank and I did not invite him to the meeting. I really didn't think he needed to be present for it, so I do
I apologize for, but
But I mean, I'm sure he'd be happy to come.
I did talk with a couple folks about this, what could be the problem years down the road. And without having seen the site plan and the idea that we're talking about a 35-foot incursion of this line into our property line, it's not significant enough to pose a devaluation of the county property if sometime we wanted to sell it. I thought to myself, if he's crossing 100 feet of our property with a buried line or otherwise, well, then that could be a devaluation. But as it stands, the way it looks, I don't see that really being an issue because we would do that for anybody that would ask. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think we're all 100% okay with it. And like I said, he's a very credible businessman in our community and in good standing. And I think he went it the right way. And I personally don't have any problem. I just wanted you to be aware of what could come down the road. And actually, Mr. Tank wouldn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about. I mean, right. Yeah.
It'd be the next guy.
Yeah.
Okay, is there further discussion on NFA008-22? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. We will move on to our added on item, which is NFA009-22. Bill, if you would please.
Santa Ana County Board of Commissioners hereby approves a credit of sick or vacation hours which an employee utilized or donated between July 1st, 2021 and January 24th, 2022 for the purpose of COVID-19 isolation and or quarantine of up to 80 hours. In order to be eligible for the credit, employees must meet the following criteria: be an active employee official as of 1/25/2022, provide proof of being COVID-19 positive or a requirement to quarantine from a healthcare professional. To receive a credit, requested information must be provided to administration by February 28th, 2022.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion from Bill and support from Joel. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. At this time, we are done with our new business. We will move on to general public comments. Do we have any public comments from anybody?
I have a question about charter townships. You were talking about, I think it was Fort Sanilac.
Yes, Sand Lake Township.
Excuse me. If they become a charter township, does that take the power away from the Board of Commissioners and it goes to the state? That's what I keep trying to understand about what is a charter township in comparison to regular township.
There are some, I don't know everything about charter townships, and it would not affect what we do here at the county commission. But typically a standard township is 5-member boards. When you go to a charter township, you go to a 7-member board. There's some other changes that happen in how they zone and the zoning laws that they apply. But beyond, that's about all my understanding is the difference between a charter township and a regular township.
That's what I was wondering because I'm in Forster Township. And at one of the meetings I was at, Mr. Daly, who's the
Supervisor.
yes, it was talking about the state coming in and trying to redo all of our tax.
That-
And is that because we are a charter and how do we change?
Now, that's a separate issue. And that's the state of Michigan kind of leveraging, I guess, flexing their muscles to an extent to make sure that local assessors are assessing property properly. Because if you think about it from the state's perspective, they're getting revenue from, the tax revenue in Forster Township and every other township in the community. And clearly the state feels like maybe there's been some discrepancies in how those assessors are assessing. So they've been applying a little more leverage to try to make sure that they're assessing it properly, essentially trying to bolster revenue is what they're trying to do.
And that's why we now have an assessor of record for the county of Sanilac, as does every other county. They were required to do so. And all the townships met several times discussing who they would have because the state wants their money, and they want it accurately
So is that
assessed.
going to change things for our township? There's been discussions every meeting.
Well, as long as you have an assessor that doesn't incur any penalties and put you, what's the name of that review?
Yeah, the board of review. So, if in the tax tribunal, so I think essentially if an assessor is kind of not doing their job good enough, they're finding that they're undervaluing stuff, then they're going to get set aside and the state's going to come in and do it.
Yeah, they basically go under an audit periodically. And if you fail that audit, that's one strike against you. You have to submit your remedial provisions that you're going to go forward. This is the assessor, whoever the township picks. Then they have another audit. They fail that. At that point, the county assessor has to provide either guidance or do it themselves. But essentially, it was you did have a lot of municipalities, townships having failed audits time and time again for a variety of reasons, because they have been increasing the parameters in which you have to perform the auditing process. So, for example, you have to physically inspect and review 20% of your properties each year, so that over the course of 5 years, you've reviewed with your eyes and with your measurements 100% of the properties, right? So there won't be that guy that put on a 3,000 square foot barn that never got assessed because he never called the township to let him know that he was doing so. That should be caught within a 5-year period of time. The charter townships, one other big difference is that they can levy 5 to 10 mills in excess of what general townships can levy against the residents. So they have a way of increasing the revenue stream 2 to 3-fold. So it's pretty significant that a hit that the township residents would take if they indeed go ahead with the charter township. And it's something you should pay attention to if your township is qualified for it. That's what Bill was mentioning earlier, where Lexington Township, Sanilac Township, and Worth Township were all notified that they can do that. If those boards take steps in order to do a charter township, the only way that they can be prevented from doing so is by a petition on the part of the constituents. And they have to comprise, I think, 20% of the voters that actually voted for the township supervisor in the last election. So you'll be pounding the pavement considerably if you wanted to fight your township board against becoming a charter township.
But I mean, realistically, that petition, you might only be talking 100 signatures. Because if you're in a township and 500 people vote,
True.
your supervisor ran unopposed and he got 500 votes, you would need 20% of 500.
Yeah.
And likely in Forster Township, that threshold would be much lower. So, but he's correct in the taxation. Obviously, the concept of moving to a charter township is in having higher taxations to provide higher township services. But if someone was against that idea, there is something you can do about it.
So show up at your township board meetings.
What I've been doing.
Another quick question on that. To be a charter township, you had to have 2,000 residents in that township, right?
That is correct. 2,000 or more.
It was over 2,000.
All right.
But I know the townships that I serve, they have no inclination to try and do this because of the requirements that are there. It's just going to create more work for them. And to quote the clerk and the treasurer in Sanilac, they both said, if you go that way, we're not going to stay on as treasurer and clerk anymore. So they have enough work to do without more.
Okay. Is there any further public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have no closed session, no approval of closed session meeting minutes, so I will call for adjournment of our
I
meeting.
move to adjourn.
Motion and support, all in favor, signify